I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Global anger mounts after an Israeli airstrike killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, including 3 British citizens. Britain calls for an immediate independent investigation. Illegal immigration is the top issue for many voters in this year's U.S. presidential election between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And Zimbabwe's president declares drought a national disaster and says the country needs $2 billion in food aid to feed millions facing hunger. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Britain is calling for an immediate Israeli investigation into an airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza amid mounting global anger over Monday's attack. 3 of those who were killed were British citizens. The World Central Kitchen is asking for an independent probe into the airstrike. Henry Ridgewell has more from London.
The bodies of the aid workers killed by an Israeli airstrike were taken out of the Gaza Strip Wednesday through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. On Monday, the missiles hit a convoy of vehicles being used by the charity World Central Kitchen. 3 of the dead were British citizens: 57-year-old John Chapman, 47-year-old James Kirby, and 33-year-old James Henderson.
That the situation is increasingly intolerable, and what we urgently need to see is a thorough, transparent investigation into what has happened, but also a dramatic increase in the amount of aid getting into Gaza.
The British Prime Minister rejected opposition calls to consider halting arms sales to Israel. The 3 British victims were providing security for World Central Kitchen through the firm Solace Global.
We have looked very closely already at everything that preceded and went on after the incident. We are completely satisfied that all measures were correctly taken and executed.
The other victims included the group's Palestinian driver, along with an Australian, a Polish and a US-Canadian citizen. Their governments have echoed calls for a swift investigation. Israel said Wednesday it did not intend to target the aid workers.
It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions. It shouldn't have happened.
The organization Human Rights Watch rejected that explanation Wednesday.
Israel's deadly attack on World Central Kitchen aid workers in Gaza displays the characteristics of a precision airstrike, indicating that the Israeli military intended to hit the vehicles. World Central Kitchen coordinated its coordinates and its movements with the Israeli government. Their vehicles were clearly marked. And the Israeli government, this is not an isolated incident.
World Central Kitchen has suspended its operations in Gaza. Its founder said the attack was the direct result of a policy that squeezed humanitarian aid to desperate levels. Despite widespread accusations from aid agencies that Israel is obstructing relief supplies into Gaza, Israel denies it is blocking aid and blames the delays on Hamas, which it accuses of using hospitals and aid facilities as military bases. Hamas denies that claim and says Israel is using hunger as a weapon of war. Henry Ridgewell, VOA News.
Illegal immigration is the top issue for many voters in this year's U.S. presidential election. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns looks at how candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden differ over what to do.
In this week's Wisconsin primary, illegal immigration was a leading issue for many voters, including contractor Scott Lindeman.
Immigration, inflation, right to life. I would say those are the big 3 for me.
Lindeman voted for Republican Donald Trump before and says he will again. Trump told a Wisconsin rally that he's preparing the largest deportation in American history to rid the country of what he considers dangerous people.
They're sending prisoners, murderers, drug dealers, mental patients, terrorists The worst of every country is coming into our country now. They're coming from the Congo, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, all over the world. They're coming. They're country changing, country threatening, and they're country wrecking. They're destroying our country.
A recent Harvard Capps-Harris poll indicates immigration is the top issue for U.S. voters, with more than a third of respondents placing it above the economy, crime, and health care. President Joe Biden says immigrants contribute to the U.S. economy and are not the dangerous animals his opponent calls them.
On my first day in office as president, I introduced a comprehensive plan to fix our immigration system, secure our border, provide a pathway for citizens, for dreamers and their families, farm workers, essential workers who helped us through the pandemic and are part of the fabric of our community. Because unlike Donald Trump, I know who we are as Americans.
Trump supporters recall his 2016 pledge to build a wall at the Mexican border. If reelected, he says he'll finish the job.
With your vote, I will seal the border. I will stop the invasion. I will end the carnage, bloodshed, and killing, and we will crush the human traffickers.
A U.S. appeals court last week stopped Texas from implementing a law that would criminalize unauthorized entry into the state and allow Texas judges to order the deportation of those arrested. Biden told U.S. mayors that there's a bipartisan plan in Congress to improve border security with more immigration judges and asylum officers, as well as high-tech drug detection.
This bill would save lives, bring order to the border. It has the funds that many of our cities badly need as well. It would also give me as president new emergency authority or any other president temporarily shut down the border when a number of immigrants is overwhelming it to regain control of the border.
House Republicans objected to the bipartisan border bill based in part on objections voiced by Trump. The Senate also failed to advance the legislation. Scott Stearns, VOA News.
U.S. weapons sales to Israel are under increased scrutiny amid outrage over the deaths of 33,000 people in Gaza. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has more.
A ship operated by aid group World Central Kitchen left Gaza and returned to Cyprus Wednesday, its food aid undelivered after Israeli airstrikes killed 7 of the charity group's workers, including a Canadian-American dual citizen, increasing demands that the Biden administration restrict its military aid to Israel. The White House shows no signs of doing so.
We are still supporting their right to defend themselves, and we're going to continue to do that. We're also going to see what the results of the investigation is. I'm not going to get ahead of decisions that haven't been made yet.
Israel is the largest recipient of U.S. aid, nearly $4 billion a year, most of it in military assistance. Under U.S. law, the administration must notify Congress of weapons transfer to Israel that's larger than $25 million. Since the October 7th Hamas attack, Congress has been notified of 4, said Josh Paul, former director at the State Department agency that handles weapons transfers.
2 of those were under the foreign military sales system, and both of those the Biden administration used an emergency authority to set aside the regular statutory congressional notification period. 2 of them have been via the direct commercial sales process and have been notified to Congress, but with less visibility because there is less information that is provided to the public on direct commercial sales.
In addition, a Department of Defense official who spoke to VOA under a condition of anonymity confirmed reporting by the Washington Post that since October 7th, over 100 arms transfers to Israel have taken place without informing Congress because the packages were structured to fall below the notification threshold.
When they are publicly saying that Israel needs to take more steps to protect civilians, but privately pushing through hundreds of millions of dollars worth of weapons, there's really no credibility when the Biden administration refuses to use the leverage that it does have. And the most significant source of leverage that the United States has is the massive amount of arms provided to Israel.
Since Harry Truman recognized Israel minutes after its founding in 1948, American presidents have supported the country almost all unconditionally, except President George H.W. Bush, who in 1991 gave Israel an ultimatum to free settlements on Palestinian land in exchange for $10 billion in loan guarantees. That approach worked, but not all agree that restricting aid will affect change.
The emotive issue of providing for a country's means to for their own defense, can sometimes trigger different responses in different theaters. It's just been a sort of inexact tool for the U.S. in the past. And so I think that's internalized within this administration right now. And so I think that coupled with the president's longstanding commitment to Israel is why you haven't seen any real steps taken on this front.
President Joe Biden said in a statement he is outraged and heartbroken by the deaths of World Central Kitchen workers, his latest stern rebuke over Israel's war conduct. Still, he refuses to respond to the question many are asking.
Would you consider conditioning military aid?
Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Zimbabwe has declared the drought as it's facing a national disaster and says it needs more than $2 billion in aid to feed millions of hungry people. For more on the drought-hit Southern African nation, I'm joined live from Harare by Christine Mendes, the World Food Programme Deputy Country Director for Zimbabwe. Christine, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning and good evening for us here. Yeah.
Right. Now, how dire is the drought situation in Zimbabwe?
The declaration of a state of disaster due to the El Nino-induced drought is significant for us because that acknowledgement calls for urgent need for all partners in the humanitarian community with government to respond in a coordinated fashion to ensure that those who will be affected by the drought are protected and given assistance as needed.
You know, we talk about response, but we also see that not only is Zimbabwe impacted by this drought, but also other countries in the region like Malawi, Angola, Botswana, Namibia, going as far as Mozambique and even Madagascar. How is WFP and other aid organizations working to respond to this crisis, working together to respond to this crisis, and maybe perhaps including the governments of these countries?
Certainly, in Zimbabwe, we are consulting. We are consulting with government and just understanding the scale of this. Assessments are underway to determine precisely how many people will be affected, in which locations, and in which sectors. We are World Food Programme is not only food, but livestock, as you're projecting there on the screen, would be affected. So we are doing a lot of consultations amongst ourselves with UN agencies, donors on the ground, and other humanitarian actors and development partners as well, of course, with the leadership of government. So that's what we're doing right now. But I think I would like to say that we had anticipated that the country would be receiving below normal rainfalls. So with the small resources that we had received, investments were being made by various players in areas such as, rebuilding dams, drilling boreholes, and just making sure that there's access to water by communities and livestock.
And Christine, briefly, are there any early warning signs that could possibly avert a crisis of this magnitude where people are really staring at a hunger crisis?
The experts project give the warning signs, but the climate change and global warming is a global phenomenon that I think collectively many of us have to put our resources and efforts together to put in place measures that would curb the negative impact of climate change to individuals and animals and the world as a whole.
Christine, thank you very much for what you're doing in Southern Africa. Great to have you on Africa 54. Christine Mendes is the World Food Programme Deputy Country Director for Zimbabwe. A Russian envoy is reiterating his government's commitment towards strengthening relations with Zambia. The African nation receives the highest number of Russian scholarships in sub-Saharan Africa, while Russia is also active in Zambia in nuclear energy, health, agriculture, and information technology. Kathy Short reports from Lusaka.
Russian ambassador to Zambia, Azim Yarakmedov, told VOA in Lusaka that his government wants to improve on the existing close relations between his country and Zambia.
To sum it up, I would like to say that Russia and Zambia have good prospects to deepen their cooperation. It is based on the fact of the relations between the people of Zambia and Russia, and based on those warm relations between the people of Zambia and Russia. We actually prepared and submitted for consideration on the Zambian side the agreement for visa-free travel between both of our countries.
Zambia attended the second Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg, Russia in 2023, which brought together 49 African countries, but only 17 African heads of state attended the summit. The summit's goal was to strengthen and expand Russian-African relations into broader horizons of joint cooperation across different fields. Zambia's former Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Minister Stanley Kakubo, who visited Moscow recently, told Zambia's state broadcaster ZNBC that his government values its long-standing relationship with Russia.
We've been able to engage on issues to do with trade, to increase the volume of trade. Of course, Russia has expressed interest in countries like our own country. I was able to discuss with President Putin on the issues of mineralization in Zambia, investment in the electric vehicle motor industry. We had that discussion as well. So we had a broad spectrum of engagements.
Boniface Chembe, a political analyst at the University of Zambia in Lusaka, is expressing concern over Russia's growing influence in Africa, especially in the Sahel region.
Actually, Russia's presence has become dominant, and you're able to see this in certain parts of the African continent where that presence is concerned, especially from a military point of view. When you talk about private military companies, say in the Sahel region where Russia has been quite influential, but also you're able to see Russia's presence even within regions that are not experiencing any kind of political instability. Zambia is one of them.
The Sahel region is a troubled part of the African continent that spreads from Senegal to the Red Sea, where there's instability and shrinking democratic space. Some Lusaka residents also shared their views on Zambia-Russia bilateral relations.
Russia has been there for our Zambian students, and that has benefited our country because when they accomplish their studies, they've come to contribute to the development of this country. I also do realize that I think Russia has been interested in the agriculture sector of our country, and now that we are facing serious climate change challenges in this country, I think I'm very confident that since they are our partners, Russia would definitely look at how to empower Zambia to come up with different ways of farming, looking at the drought that we are experiencing.
Analysts say while Moscow's involvement in Africa lags behind Western powers, it is increasing its influence on the continent. Kathy Short for VOA Lusaka, Zambia.
Ugandan citizens are expressing their views after the country's constitutional court upheld an anti-gay law that allows the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality. A Kampala court rejected the petitioner's request to quash the law despite widespread condemnation from rights groups and others abroad.
Propagating everything on homosexuals, but I know we are going to appeal. That's what I know, because this is unfair judgment for us.
We believe this is the front line of Africa's independence. This is the front line of preserving us as a people. So I'm happy with the ruling and the judgment that was delivered today, which vindicated us.
Constitutional Court judges say the law was legally passed by Parliament and does not violate the Constitution. Still to come, Zimbabwe attempts to turn trash dump into a source of biogas. We'll be right back.
According to World Economic Forum, an estimated 100 million people in Africa suffer from clinical depression, and 66 million of them are women. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we'll seek to understand more about depression, which has been described as the most prevalent mental illness in the world. We'll also speak with experts on how depression is treated. Join the conversation each week, right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, South Africa's Parliament Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nkakula, 67, has resigned just weeks after her home was raided in a graft probe. She says she decided to step down to uphold the integrity of Parliament. However, Mapisa-Nkakula insists her decision is not an indication of admission of guilt. Somali officials have expelled the Ethiopian ambassador and closed 2 consulates in the semi-autonomous region of Puntland and another in the breakaway region, Somaliland, due to rising tensions over a port deal. In January, Ethiopia agreed to a memorandum of understanding focused on leasing 20 kilometers of coastline in Somaliland, a territory that Somalia says it owns. And South Sudanese President Salva Kiir is warning lawmakers to, quote, not to cling to power, just weeks after former rival Vice President Riek Machar proposed a postponement of elections expected to be held in December. Zimbabwe is attempting to turn its biggest trash dump into a renewable energy source that can be used to produce electricity. Columbus Mavunga reports.
A few months back, this dump site was an eyesore and a foul odor hung heavy in the air, but not anymore. A local company, Geopomona Waste Management, is trying to turn the site into a source of biogas and electricity. 30-year-old Tinashe Chisanu from a nearby township is one of the workers constructing the project.
This project is really helping me as a Zimbabwean. It has offered me a job, and now I am able to look after my family. I am really grateful to the project, and I'm sure my workmates are being helped by this project.
Digesters take in organic waste and convert it to biogas, which can be used to produce electricity. Victor Tarirai is Chief Operating Officer at the biogas company Landforce Energy in Harare.
Biogas is that it's a renewable energy source. Also, you can do many things like cooking, brooder heating, as well as harvesting an organic fertilizer, which then replaces the use of chemical fertilizers. The disadvantages, the initial investment costs, and also the need for continuous monitoring and maintenance of the digesters.
Simarashe Mchena is a waste energy engineer at Geopomona Waste Management. He says the project will end the problem of Harare's gigantic trash dumps which spread disease.
After that, we drill biogas wells, which will extract biogas from the waste, organic waste, which was underneath, which degrades and produces biogas. Then after that, we generate, with the new waste, we generate 16 to 22 megawatts of electricity through the incineration process, whereby we have to burn the waste in a combustion chamber.
But Precious Shumba, director of Harare Residents Trust, says the government-backed project is an unsustainable exploitation of ratepayers of Harare. He says the company is charging $40 a ton for garbage delivered to the dump.
We have added an addendum that is requesting the city of Harare to pay an additional $124 per ton of garbage collected. So this will be exploitative to the city of Harare, as it amounts to around $3 million per month, and the ratepayers cannot afford that.
But as things stand, Zimbabwe's capital will have a biogas plant sometime in coming months. Residents hope the pros will outweigh the cons. Columbus Mavunga, VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
A South African who was bullied at high school is celebrating his dance students participating in the colorful Cape Town Carnival. Vicky Stark has more.
Wesley Alfonso Bosch founded the Rebel Dance Academy and teaches about 500 kids a week at schools and in community halls. Because of what he went through in his teens, some of Bosch's dance classes are called bully-proof.
He just hit me like whole time. He didn't just smack me for no reason, and he laughed at it. And the people used to laugh with him because it was a joke, you know what I mean?
The bully was a member of a gang. So fittingly, this class is taking place in the community centre in Bonteheuwel, a suburb where some gangs operate.
So we actually do moves like we lift each other up. I am strong, I say no, but in a fun way, and make kids come together and enjoy each other together, and I think that's what school is about.
Some of his dance students participated in the annual Cape Town Carnival. The event, which is styled on the world-famous Rio Carnival, showcases the talents of people from disadvantaged communities, like 15-year-old Ziomara Boltney from Bonteheuwel.
Dance has had a very big impact on my life. As I was growing up, I went through a lot, inside of the house and outside, because of we grew up seeing teen pregnancy and young boys dying because of gunshot wounds.
The UN is working to support programs which raise awareness about bullying. Indrani Zakar, a child protection specialist for the UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, explains that the effects of bullying can sometimes last a lifetime.
Bullying can have significant and lasting effects on children, both during their formative years as well as later on in life, something that's often not considered to have an impact later on. First, one of the important things that happens is there is an emotional and psychological effect. Children often who experience bullying have a low self-esteem.
Zakar says UNICEF offers help to organizations and governments trying to combat bullying.
One is our global UNICEF parenting document, which is basically on what exactly is bullying and how to stop it. It's a resource for parents to understand, to educate them about bullying, how children experience bullying. It's also a manual on understanding for children themselves.
Bosch says he hopes to grow his dance academy so that more children find the courage to speak up about being bullied. Meanwhile, he'll keep providing a safe space for them to find joy.
Dancing is amazing if you know it. You stress, everything you can take out on dancing, but not harmful, not violence, not arguing, just dance it out if you can dance.
Vicky Stark, VOA News, Cape Town, South Africa.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.